Donald Trump insists he's calling the shots, but he's ignored by Iran and Israel as the Middle East ceasefire crumbles. Sirens blare in Jerusalem as the two countries trade missile strikes for the first time in 2 months. They've been trading threats too. Tehran says it will turn the region into hell. Tel Aviv insists its military will respond forcefully. So if the US president can't rein in his Israeli counterpart or make Iran sign a deal, is there any real chance of peace? We'll discuss that tonight.
You didn't read first version.
The first version was ruder? Do you want to share? What did Volodymyr Zelenskyy write in the first draft of his letter to Russia's president? Our Moscow correspondent joins me live in the studio. Plus, find out the real reason for China's President Xi's rare visit to Pyongyang. A brief encounter with a great white shark in the Mediterranean Sea. We'll hear from the diver who captured the first ever images. Coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. We've become used to the early morning rants from Donald Trump and his need to pretend that he's got everything under control. After Iran and Israel exchanged their first missile strikes for 2 months, the president's message was simple: stop shooting. Then, after both sides decided to temporarily lay down their weapons, came the customary declaration that peace is just around the corner. But everyone knows it's not that simple, because all the signs point to escalation. The Houthis, based in Yemen and backed by Iran, have joined the war and are threatening to block the Red Sea. And the Strait of Hormuz, well, that remains closed. So what can the US president do other than angry phone tirades and Truth Social posts? We'll discuss that in a moment in Washington's fraying relationship with Tel Aviv. But first, here's our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons.
For the first time in 2 months, Israelis watched Iranian missiles in their skies, all of them reportedly intercepted by air defenses. Donald Trump cautioned patience, but he was ignored. Israel inevitably responded, attacking this Iranian petrochemical plant as well as the country's military infrastructure. An attack that caused damage but not devastation. An attack that Israel felt it had to carry out, whatever the American president might say.
If the terrorist regime in Iran makes the mistake and attacks us again, we will respond with massive force. Israel has a right to self-defense, and we will exercise that to the full extent necessary.
Iran's position markedly different, insistent that Israel's earlier attack on Beirut, which Israel claimed was aimed at the Iranian proxy group Hezbollah, had crossed a red line. A few hours later, more Iranian missiles fired at Israel. Those white streaks you can see are interceptions above Jerusalem. The Houthis also launched missiles from Yemen. Then Iran delivered its rhetorical response, blaming America for enabling Israeli aggression.
These developments in the past 24 hours will certainly intensify suspicions. Even now, we have been exchanging messages with the American side in an atmosphere of extremely deep mistrust. Without any doubt, as I have said, it is impossible to separate the actions of the Zionist regime in the region from US policies.
There are no reports of significant injuries so far in either Israel or Iran, but there are scars. This home in an illegal Israeli settlement in the West Bank was badly damaged. And look at this, an Iranian missile casing that has dug itself into the desert near the town of Jericho, a source of curiosity, but not catastrophe. Having traded salvos, Iran declared it would silence its weapons as long as Israel did not resume its attacks in southern Lebanon, where the Israeli military has been continually on the offensive. In this region, peace feels fragile, elusive, and ephemeral. Violence can come fast, and hope can evaporate quickly. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
So how did these tit-for-tat strikes unfold, and how long will both sides show restraint? Here's our defence and security analyst, Michael Clark.
Day 101 of the war seemed to begin in a rather dangerous state after day 100 because overnight a series of things had happened. Hezbollah had launched a series of rockets into northern Israel. They don't seem to have done any damage, certainly no casualties. But in response, the Israelis went to Beirut. They'd always said that they might. The Americans had said, don't go to Beirut, but they did. They went to the Dahaya area, the southern suburb of Beirut, which is the Hezbollah stronghold, and they attacked it. And because of that, the Iranians then did what they said they would do in that case, and they attacked Israel. And they sent a number of missiles to places like Tel Nof and particularly Nevatim. Nevatim is quite interesting because Nevatim is quite near Dimona, which is the nuclear plant, and all of Israel's nuclear stuff and its main Air Force base is at Nevatim. And the fact is, the Iranians were making a clear point here. They were sending ballistic missiles. According to American intelligence, they've still got 70% of the ballistic missile stocks and maybe 75% of all of their launchers. So the Iranians, and this is their footage, were making the point that they can still send ballistic missiles and they can get through the Iron Dome system, Israel's defense system, and hit the ground, which indeed they did. They were not launching an all-out attack. They were launching a symbolic attack which did what they wanted it to do. And as a result, the Israelis then did what they said that they were going to do, and they struck Iran. Now, they struck Iran in more places, so they went for Tabriz and Karaj and Tehran and Isfahan and Mashhad, which is in the south. And Mashhad, they said, was a petrochemical plant that produces fuel for ballistic missiles, quite likely. But again, the Israelis didn't do all of the things that they said that they might do. And we were all worrying that these sort of mutual exchange of missiles would result in a bigger regional conflagration again, because the Iranians had always said, if the Israelis attack us, we will attack American bases again in Iraq, in Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in the United Arab Emirates, even in Oman. And if that were the case, if they really did go after those bases, then the whole conflagration would start again, and the region as a whole will be back to war of the sort we saw up until the ceasefire of the 8th of April. But it didn't happen. This afternoon, the Iranians said that they would not attack Israel any further as long as Israel did not attack them. And about an hour later, the Israelis said, well, they will not attack Iran any further as long as Hezbollah did not attack or send any rockets from Lebanon over the border to northern Israel. So both sides have stood back. And it's possible that that will hold if Hezbollah can be deterred from firing any rockets into northern Israel. Which brings us to the situation back to, in a sense, where we were. President Trump is trying to make sure that both sides restrain their actions against each other. Netanyahu, you must not go to Beirut again. You must not attack Beirut. Galibaf, you must actually stick with the peace plan that we are developing with you or in league with you, and you must not then attack the Israelis. President Trump is trying to maintain this sense that there is progress in the talks. Whether there is or not, we don't really know. All of them are playing brinkmanship. All of them are playing for time and trying to bluff. And above all, President Trump is trying to buy time for his deal. If it's close, we're not sure, but to buy time for that deal to work. In reality, he probably doesn't have as much time as he says he's got, but today, maybe, he's bought himself a little bit more.
Professor Michael Clark there. Let's go straight to Washington and speak to our James Matthews. And James, just picking up there on what Michael was saying there about President Trump wanting to buy time, but frankly, he faces this massive dilemma, from both sides.
Yeah, you're right, Yalda. We have an uneasy peace, don't we? Uneasy for a number of reasons, not least how long it will last. It's hard to get a read on that. I'm not sure I would necessarily trust President Trump's assessment. He presents as the man calling the shots, but all the signs are that he can't control these warring parties in this. He's talking up the chances of a peace deal, suggesting it's what both sides want. But it's not the first time he's put top spin on it. 4 or 5 times we've been told we're on the brink, and to no end. The politics are clearly more complicated than Israel or Iran doing what he tells them. Both clearly reserve the right to act in their own interests. And we're seeing, I think, the limits of Donald Trump's influence. His relationship with Netanyahu and the power dynamic between them is central to what happens next. They went into this with a shared objective, the less attainable that looks, the more antagonistic that relationship is becoming. Trump needs the quick resolution, something he can sell as a victory, however short it might be of a satisfactory outcome. That will not do for Netanyahu. He needs more than a quick political fix. So this alliance of convenience has got extremely inconvenient. And we get a sense, I think, of the fractious nature of the relationship between the two in reports recently by Axios. Trump has been speaking to them on the phone, and he has warned, we're told, Benjamin Netanyahu that if he goes back to war with Iran, he might find himself fighting alone.
Yeah, and the big question then is for Benjamin Netanyahu, is he going to listen? Because, as far as the Israelis are concerned, the plus side of this has been that they've had the might of the United States on their side, and the minus side is that they've had the might of the United States on their side, and they can pull the plug at any point.
That's right, Yalda, yeah. And the question for Trump, I think, is what does he do next that he hasn't done already? What does he do? Who does he do business with, and on what terms? These are issues, I think, as intractable today as they were 100 days ago. And Trump isn't enhanced by that fact. Rather, I think he's diminished.
Thanks so much for your analysis and for that update, Matthew. Let's speak to Sina Azodi, the director of the Middle East Studies program at George Washington University and the author of Iran and the Bomb, United States, Iran and the Nuclear Question. Thank you so much, Sina, for joining us here on the program. Just speaking there to my colleague, James Matthews, who was talking about the dilemma, frankly, that Donald Trump faces. On the one hand, he wants to spin that he is able to negotiate and bring the Iranians to the table and get to some kind of deal. And then on the other hand, he's dealing with a sort of erratic Benjamin Netanyahu, who is now seemingly taking matters into his own hands increasingly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Donald Trump's instinct from the beginning, as we saw in his many years of campaigns, his own national security strategy document of November 2025, was not to start wars, but yet he was dragged into this war, that he was really duped into it, that it's going to be a quick victory, it's going to be a regime change, and you're going to be the president who witnessed the downfall of the Islamic Republic. But it was proven wrong, rather. And he faced the consequences, domestic consequences. His approval rating in the US is very low. The economy, inflation has gone up, gas is still up, and he's facing pressure from Republicans that are concerned with their own political career. And yet again, he needs to make sure that Israelis are not going to act on their own and drag the U.S. again into a conflict.
And what the Iranians see in all of this is an increasingly frustrated president who wants a deal. And so they are going to try and take more risks and push the boundaries as far as they can.
I think Iranians have been acting with more confidence. From their perspective, they just won the war by not losing it, and by surviving it, they achieved their political objective. And they believe that time is on their side. They've said it repeatedly, that they can outlast Donald Trump. They follow American politics quite closely, that he's going to have to face elections. And they believe that, yes, the economic pressure will be very high, but ultimately they can survive it. But what I do want to emphasize here, that from Tehran's perspective, the U.S. and Israel are the same thing. The Israelis are acting on behalf of the United States, and this might be, again, this is from their perspective, that it's a good cop, bad cop thing to get Iran to surrender to Donald Trump's demands. This is why they're dragging their feet. I mean, yes, the process of deliberations are very slow, but they're also dragging their feet. They want to make sure that, as they've said, all fronts are in a ceasefire and not just one or two.
And Sina, I guess the major change in the dynamics here is that Iran has made it clear that if Israel continues to hit Beirut and, frankly, southern Lebanon, it will come to the aid of Lebanon or Hezbollah, or however you view it, and strike Israel.
Yes, I mean, the Iranian foreign minister's position was that violation of ceasefire in one front is a violation of ceasefire on all fronts. They had repeatedly threatened that if war in Lebanon continues, they're going to respond. And yesterday we saw that they decided to attach a political cost to their threats, and they acted. It was rather restrained, and I think this is why Israeli response was, measured as well, because Donald Trump apparently had asked them. This is how they see it. They want to make sure that the entire region is seeing a clean slate. They don't want to be dragged into yet another conflict with Israel in the future. That's from a geostrategic perspective. But there's also an ideological connection to it as well, that, the Shias of southern Lebanon to have close connections to the Shias that in Iran. And the constituency of the Islamic Republic also is very much in support of intervening.
Sina Azzouri, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring in Liane Pollack-David, a former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you so much, Liane, for joining us here on the programme. I just want you to help us understand Benjamin Netanyahu's mindset in this moment, because, of course, Donald Trump in the last 24 hours said, I call the shots and I'm going to tell him to stop. And then, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't. Was he talking directly to his own base and saying to them, listen, I'm going to, defy the US president and do what I need to do?
Well, there's two aspects here, really. First and foremost is that he is the Israeli prime minister, and Israel is still a sovereign state. And when Israel is being attacked, it has to do whatever it takes in order to protect itself. So that is the expectation, not from his supporters, but rather from the Israeli public as a whole. The second element is, of course, we have the elections coming up in Israel in a few months' time. And yes, I suppose that Netanyahu has an interest to show his own base that he has the power to say no to an American president. But mainly, we have to remember that this whole last few days attacks across the region have started because Hezbollah attacked directly the northern parts of Israel, civilian population, and Israel retaliated against Hezbollah, not Lebanon, in Beirut. And as a result, Iran has decided to unify between its own interests and what's happening in Beirut, and decided to then basically attack Israel. So this is really what happened, and we need to focus on that.
But you would agree, Liane, that frankly what Israel has done in southern Lebanon, the flattening of the south. I mean, I spent time in Beirut. I spoke to Lebanese leaders who said that Israel was taking a Gaza approach to southern Lebanon. And the US president did say to the Israeli prime minister, you can't hit Beirut because you will jeopardize this peace deal. Do you think that ultimately Benjamin Netanyahu wants to put this deal between the United States and Iran at risk?
I don't think that this is his intention, but I do think that right now the Israeli and American immediate interests may not be fully aligned. Of course, we have the Hormuz issue, which is a big worry to the American economy. And then on the other side, we have the Israeli security interests that are immediate. We have tens of thousands of Israeli citizens living under fire daily. We have kids not even be able to run to a shelter in the northern parts of Israel because they don't have enough time. We have Israeli soldiers being killed every single day in an attempt to stop these attacks. So the Israeli prime minister, and I'm not a protector or a supporter of his actually, but he is obligated to protect the people of Israel. Now, the situation with Lebanon is actually on a positive route right now because we finally have formal negotiations happening between Israel and the anti-Iranian, anti-Hezbollah Lebanese government. Also, President Aoun's interview to CNN just a few days ago was remarkable in my view. And Israelis see that. Israelis want peace with Lebanon. Lebanese actually want peace with Israel. Every single poll shows that.
Leanne, can I just...
Just to complete, the player that is in the way is Hezbollah, fueled by Iran. So whenever Iran stops influencing Lebanon, that's when we will have peace.
What we're seeing in southern Lebanon, though, is civilian populations being targeted and killed, homes being destroyed, over 1 million people forced to flee their homes and be displaced and moved. You know, hundreds of people killed in this conflict that's lasted several months now. The Iranians have made it clear that if you hit Beirut, if you hit southern Lebanon in this way, we will come to their aid. Does that not change the equation for Israel?
Well, first and foremost, my greatest sympathy really with the Lebanese civil population. That has nothing to do with what's going on in Hezbollah. And war is messy, and the IDF is trying to do whatever it takes, including evacuation letters, etc., notifications, in order not to hit civil population. But to say that Iran is going out there to defend Lebanon, no, listen to the Lebanese themselves. They are saying, President Aoun is saying to Iran, get out of our country. So Iran is in the way. Iran is not the protector of Lebanon. The Lebanese government is actually a protector of Lebanon. They don't currently have the capabilities to do it, but we should strengthen them, and all the moderate regional players should get involved and help the Lebanese government be the sovereign government that it needs to be in order to demilitarize Hezbollah and get Iran's influence out of the way. This is what's keeping us from moving from a very difficult place where we are right now to potentially a new chapter where stability, security, and prosperity is possible.
Leanne, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you very much indeed.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme, we hear from Ukraine's president about an open letter he sent to Vladimir Putin.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
Been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim. The Ukrainian president has been busy this weekend. Yesterday, he met the leaders of the UK, France and Germany in Downing Street. This afternoon, he's been spending time with the King. Volodymyr Zelenskyy also spoke to me and revealed that he's willing to freeze the front line in exchange for negotiations. We also chatted about that open letter that he wrote to the Russian president. Before I play you some of our conversation, just a quick reminder of what Ukraine's leader wrote. "We brought the war onto your territory," he wrote. "You would not have been able to cope with it without North Korea's help. You're the first ruler of Russia to turn to Pyongyang for assistance. And today, you're fully dependent on China, also for the first time in Russia's history. After 26 years in power, age is beginning to take its toll. And with time, the fatigue with you will only grow. The choice is yours now. Enough of war." You sent him a letter asking to meet. It was quite a cheeky letter. He described it as rude. You referenced his age, for example, the number of years he's been in power. You said you've been in power for 26 years. And
you didn't read first version.
The first version was ruder? Do you want to share with us?
No.
but he rejected the letter almost immediately.
Now, it's, I sent a letter, open letter, because I don't know if he will read, or not. Open letter, it means that he has to answer to us and what is important to his society, because his society lives in some fantastic world that they didn't attack, that it's not their aggressive war, that they're defending some Russian-speaking people. So, I mean, it's not serious. So, and that's why, for me, it's very, very important to openly to share where we are. And it's important. They closed the internet and a lot of different things. We don't have too much possibilities to give signals to this country, the country of aggression, and they brought this big war to our country. They have to stop. And I sent him this letter openly. Nobody understands where we are with this war. And it was very important for me, for Americans, not to forget about us. I understand with all the challenges in the Middle East, but this is the biggest war during these 80 years, the biggest in Europe. And that's why so this is so big, so many losses, human lives, we need to stop it. Don't make pauses because of Iran or something else. All the wars are bad, but we don't, we can't find priority. If we speak about the wars, we need to stop them as quick as possible. And it was important. So before my letter, he said several times publicly that he's ready to speak, and he wants to stop this war. And he said about it publicly, but he doesn't feel that the readiness of Kiev, But he always said that Kiev regime, I think that he's speaking about me, such way. So, but for me, I mean, when I wanted very much to send him that to stop play these games and answer. If it's public letter, he has to answer. He has to answer. Better to meet, better to stop this war, his war, by the way.
That was President Zelenskyy, and we'll come back to more of that interview. But joining me here in the studio is our Moscow correspondent, Iva Bennett. Iva, welcome to the studio.
Great to be here.
Yeah, really great to, not be doing it down the line from Moscow or St. Petersburg, where you've been in the last few days. But we can talk about, all of the things that's going on in Russia in a moment. But I just want you to talk to us a little bit about reaction to that letter that President Zelenskyy wrote, because I did say to President Zelenskyy, he described it as rude. And when you read the interview, I mean, it is quite cheeky and at times quite insulting.
Insolent was the word Vladimir Putin used. I think, first of all, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is right that the format of this threat, this offer, the open letter in the middle of this economic forum was the way to get Putin to respond. It would have looked strange if he hadn't, because he had this Q&A session the day afterwards, and this letter was the talk of not just the Western press, but also the Russian press, so he had to respond. But the response, nonetheless, was very surprising, because normally threats, ultimatums, they get batted away very quickly, doesn't give them much airtime. But this time he did. He talked about the letter for about 10 minutes, which was strange, and the response felt prepared, had lots of taunts in of his own. He poked fun at Zelensky's outfits, calling them Rambo style, in the same way as Donald Trump has in the past. He's never done that before. He kept referring to Zelenskyy not by name, but as the author of the letter, several times. And he also had a retort planned on the quip about his age. So that all seemed quite strange for someone who'd claimed to have only skim-read the letter, right? And I think, to me, that kind of betrays some unease, concern within the Kremlin at the prevailing narrative right now that Ukraine is in the ascendancy, that Russia's on the back foot. It felt like a part of this attempt to reclaim the narrative, reassert Vladimir Putin's authority, put Zelenskyy in his place, at least in the eyes of the Russian people. And just on the substance of Zelensky's letter and this offer to freeze the lines of contact where they are, would Russia go for it? The simple answer is no, and the reason is because it's just not enough for Putin to declare victory with, right? After such a long war, he has to have something substantive to show for it, after all the cost. And we have to remember what this was sold as to the Russian people. It was, we're going to go and do this to protect Russian speakers in those eastern parts of Ukraine. He annexed those 4 regions very early on in the conflict. We can see them here. September 2022, here's the front line. But if he's going to come away from this, having only claimed not all of the Donbass, and this is the advances over the time, he's still got 15% of Donetsk region that's in Ukrainian hands. If he's going to come away with this, with not all of the Donbass, then that's a much harder sell to the Russian public saying, yes, we won. Because people could start to say, well, hang on, was this really worth it?
Why did we do this?
Right.
So many lives lost, so much money. And we'll get to the Russian economy in a moment. But, when I asked him about Abramovich being a go-between, he talked about the fact that he'd brought this message about the Donbass. And again, President Zelenskyy made it very clear that Donbass is not up for grabs. So, in their own way, the Ukrainians are making it clear that this is not a bargaining chip that we're willing to use. But we're just going to keep you there for a second, Iva, because we're going to go back to that interview with the Ukrainian president. He has been emphasising the urgent need to ramp up production of weapons to combat Russia's powerful hypersonic ballistic missiles. Just have a listen to the rest of the interview. You talked about the vulnerabilities you have with the air defences and the support you need, and you've reached out to the Americans asking for more Patriots, and we can talk about that in a moment. But at present, 70% of Russia's population is in the sight of your missiles and your drones. We saw in the last week, St. Petersburg hit twice. What message are you sending the Russian people?
We produced a lot of different drones and different missiles. We still don't have ballistic, but we are now on the way. We're very close. So it's our response. Our attacks to St. Petersburg on the military goals, by the way, or energy, after his attacks on our energy. So, and our response to the territory of Moscow region, it's our response and answer that we will not just silently die, and we will respond, and we will be stronger and stronger each day, day by day. It's true, by the way, it's true. Now we have more than 400 companies. Can you imagine? We didn't have them. Putin understands only when there is a total pressure on him, when you're strong, when your answers are strong. That's why we show that our drones will come to the cities. I said to the city because we already did it during long period of time, villages and etc. We responded small cities, but they live in St. Petersburg and they live in Moscow and they don't think what's going on in other cities of Russia. So we tried it to show them that we will be closer and closer and will bring back their war on the territory from where this war came to us.
President Zelenskyy speaking to me while he was here in London on his trip. Let's discuss it further with Iva. I mean, the one thing that really came across with this interview with President Zelenskyy was how the technology has changed the battleground. You know, the drones that they're using, the sort of drones that they've developed, I think they're on their 7th generation. The Russians have learnt a lot from them, but the Ukrainians still have some vulnerabilities, you know, with some of these missiles. And he certainly talked there about the hypersonic missiles as well.
Yeah, so Zelensky's big thing now, he wants more air defences, right? And he's appealing for help there because it's, as you say, it's to do with Russia's hypersonic missile known as the Oreshnik missile. It's intermediate range, nuclear-capable ballistic missile. So it range more than 5,000 kilometres, we can see here, and that's the potential. That's the minimum, I believe. And the speed, it can travel up to 13,000 kilometres per hour, we're told. And according to Vladimir Putin, it's impossible to intercept. So no existing weapons air defence system can get near it. I mean, some Western experts dispute that latest claim, the one about not possible to intercept it, saying that's overblown. But even so, its use on the battlefield is seen by Europe as an escalation. I think and it's been used 3 times in the conflict so far. Earliest, kind of 18 months ago, most recently 2 weeks ago. And what's really interesting is how much Vladimir Putin's been talking about it in recent months. And this is the damage from the latest hit, I think. And he talked about it even last week in St. Petersburg in this economic forum, saying, look, we haven't used it in combat scenario yet. It's only been test-fired with dummy warheads, as if to say, look, we're just testing it out. We're going to see how we might use it. And it was a very thinly veiled kind of rattling of the sabre. And I think that's partly to try and scare Europe, to remind them how powerful Russia's arsenal is. And look, don't back Kiev too much because we can lash out. And I think it's also to try and get the attention of Donald Trump, because we have to remember that the Trump administration-led peace talks represents, I think, Vladimir Putin's best way out of this, right, the best possible outcome. And of course, he's now totally engaged with the Middle East. He's not paying any attention to Ukraine. I think Putin, with these threats of escalation, wants Donald Trump to get back engaged, trying to grab his attention as if to say, look, if you don't re-engage here with the peace process, things could get messy, things could escalate.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that on one level, you know, he's stuck, even though he talks about being able to, not necessarily happily, but continuing with this war. The one thing that is clear this year, though, Iva, and you've been monitoring this for some time, is that the Russian economy is starting to be impacted. It's contracted. For years, we've heard, you know, different types of intel that the Russian economy was going to collapse. That clearly isn't the case, but it is starting to show that, you know, this war is taking its toll.
Yeah, I think we can agree that the economy is under pressure. I think everyone can agree with that, even Russia. There are challenges. It's not about to collapse, but it's showing strain. After years of high growth, because of all the military spending, the growth now is dipping. and there are all the numbers and evidence points to stagnation. But what was amazing last week at this kind of flagship economic forum and this investment event, the Russian Davos, as it's known, here's Vladimir Putin speaking at it, was that the defiance on show, not just from him, but also from politicians, officials, and also businessmen saying, yeah, OK, there are challenges, but we can ride them out. We've got this. And I think we can just play a clip of an interview I did with the CEO of VTB Bank, which is the second biggest bank in Russia, and just to give a sense of that defiance. Let's have a listen. How much longer, though, can the Russian economy endure the current situation that you refer to, the sanctions, the ongoing military spending?
You know, the Russian economy somehow adjusted to the sanctions. We switched from Western technology, we switched from export to Europe, for example, or Western countries to the global south, to East, to China, to India, to other, mainly to China, of course. And we bring in technology from China. And I think from this point of view, we somehow coped with the sanctions. We learned how to make a payment in local currencies.
Just on the military spending, though, if that continues at current levels, I mean, how much longer can that continue like that?
Well, I think that as long as the war continues. I mean, you can't conduct war without military expenses, I'm afraid.
So it can continue for as long as it needs, you think, with the economy as it is?
Of course, you know, we are quite ready to sign peaceful agreement, to reach an agreement on certain terms, of course, but otherwise the Russian economy can cope with these expenses for, I don't know,
for as long as it needs.
As long as it needs, I'm afraid, yeah.
So I think that was really, really revealing. So at the forum, in public, very much a united front. We can go on as long as we need. But behind closed doors, there are reports and signs of a split, of a division within the elite. So you've got one side, you've got the hardliners, the nationalists, who say, look, war comes first no matter the cost. We're in this existential battle with the West. On the other side, there's the more kind of business-oriented group that say, look, it's time for a peace deal. Look at all the economic benefits, lifting of sanctions, foreign investment. But despite that, no sign of Vladimir Putin changing course yet.
Ivor, really great to have you in the studio here with us, and I'm glad that we could play part of that interview as well. Thanks so much for joining us. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, a colourful welcome for China's president in North Korea, but we'll tell you why he's worried about Russia.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist. Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, there's been a colourful welcome for Chinese President Xi Jinping as he makes his first visit to North Korea in nearly 7 years. He was personally greeted by Kim Jong-un and his wife, who made a rare public appearance as part of China's charm offensive to win Pyongyang back from Russian influence. Our Asia correspondent Helen Ann Smith can explain more.
What we've seen today is really the ultimate red carpet being rolled out in Pyongyang for Xi Jinping. But I think a lot of what we've seen is actually quite unusual. It is unusual for the North Koreans to host any visiting leader. These days, it's actually also quite unusual for Xi Jinping to travel for these type of one-on-one meetings. And it's unusual to see Kim Jong-un's wife, who was out in the greeting party when Xi Jinping and his wife arrived. And I think all of that unusualness, if you like, speaks to the fact that to both sides, this is really quite an important visit. There's a lot at stake for both of them. Look, North Korea and China are long-standing allies. For long periods of history, China was really the only ally that North Korea had to look to. And there's always been this massive imbalance in the relationship. North Korea, this hermit kingdom with a desperately struggling economy for so many years. China, this rising superpower, the second biggest economy in the world. But that imbalance still exists for sure, but it has shifted slightly in the last couple of years. And I think that is the all-important context to this visit. Now, what does North Korea want from this? Well, look, it wants economic concessions from China for sure. Its economy is still very weak. It needs aid. It needs imports of rice and fertilizer. It would really like some Chinese tourists to come and visit these huge new resorts that have been built in North Korea. It wants a sort of tacit approval for its nuclear program. And it wants the images, I think, to show the rest of the world that this is still a strong relationship, that China has its back, and it can use these images to leverage influence on other relationships that it holds. But look, crucially, North Korea is in a more confident position now than it has been for a long time. And the reason for that is that it's developing another geopolitical relationship, not with China, but with Russia. In the wake of the war in Ukraine, North Korea has supplied Russia with weapons and with men in exchange for things like military know-how and food aid and oil. And that's drawn those two nations very close. And China doesn't really like that very much. And I think that is the key reason that Xi Jinping has made this visit. He wants to reassert China's dominance in this region and in this relationship. He wants to show the rest of the world that North Korea needs China ultimately, and that China is really in the driving seat. And I think those optics are very, very important for Xi Jinping.
That was Helen Ann Smith. Well, Sky News has just spoken to US President Donald Trump. It was in a phone call with our US correspondent James Matthews, and I'm going to bring James back in. James, you've just spoken with the president. Just give us a sense of what was said.
Yeah, hi, Yalda. A brief phone call, it should be said, but I had a few questions to ask him, and he took one. My question to him was about Benjamin Netanyahu, this business of Israel and Netanyahu having defied his wishes over the weekend to retaliate or to strike against Iranian targets, or targets in Beirut at least. I asked him this: if Benjamin Netanyahu goes back to war with Iran, will you be with him? Bearing in mind that Trump had told him not to strike back. His answer was this: I don't think it'll happen. It's all working out very well. Iran is doing what they have to do. I don't think that's going to happen okay. My second follow-up question to that was, if Netanyahu defies your wishes, what will you do? But he didn't respond to that and hung up. So we're grateful for the time with Donald Trump, the US president. But again, that his answer leaves further questions, of course. Principally, why is this a president rolling out the crisis, what crisis mode? He said there that Netanyahu doesn't think Netanyahu will attack, says that Iran is doing what they have to do. Now, we've heard that kind of tone and content from Donald Trump in the past, as saying that essentially there's nothing to see here and everything is going swimmingly, when that has been far from the case. So I think the hard question on the back of this would be, Mr. President, to what extent are you connected to reality on this? Where is the evidence that Iran is doing what it has to do? Because if Iran's doing what you want it to do, why are we 100 days into this war with no sign of any settlement or no hard evidence that you will agree a framework for a peace deal? Why the delay if everything is going well, as you continue to tell us that it is? So I think that's the key takeaway, if you like, from this. He's got confidence in Netanyahu, he's got confidence in the Iranians, but yet again, we need to see the evidence for that. And I do wonder, Yalda, I wonder what happens next. Do we see Israel striking against Iranian interests? Do we see Iran defying his wishes? Because if we see either of these things, then that undermines what he has just expressed to me in a phone call. Not a great look, and not for the first time, for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and when you make those sorts of statements or put out red lines or say I call the shots and Benjamin Netanyahu will listen to what I have to say, or the Iranians are at the negotiating table, they want a deal, and then the two warring sides do the exact opposite, where does that then leave Donald Trump, and what are his next moves? Or is he going to continue to try and rein Benjamin Netanyahu in, try and push for his deal, and try and put on some kind of very sort of confident front, knowing that you know, very, very quickly things are starting to spiral out of his control?
Yeah, and control is the key word, isn't it, Yalda? What control does Donald Trump have in all of this? He told the Financial Times that I call the shots. He said that at a time when the evidence indicated absolutely something else, that Iran and Israel will act to preserve and protect their interests, no matter what message is sent out from the White House. So that appears to be the reality. To some degree, that's being contradicted in the sentiments that Donald Trump has expressed, this confidence that Netanyahu will toe the line and that Iran is acting as he wants it to behave. So, you know, it remains to be seen whether that confidence is justified. It has not been in the past.
Indeed. James, thank you so much. Now, divers in the Mediterranean got a surprise when they spotted a great white shark. The creatures are thought to be near extinction in the area because of overfishing. Here's our science correspondent, Thomas Moore.
They'd only just jumped in when the shark, around 4 metres long, approached, little more than 3 metres away. A rare and brief encounter, believed to be the first time the predator has been videoed underwater in the Med.
There's two parts in your brain. One is like, okay, I'm big, I'm a diver, I have all this tech, the equipment around me, but this is the sane side of the brain. The emotional side goes like, this is the prime predator in this area, so you never know.
It's thought there are a few hundred great white sharks in the Mediterranean Sea, with numbers declining because of illegal fishing. The divers were in the Strait of Sicily, between the Italian island and Tunisia, an area that scientists say could be their last stronghold. This is what the divers had come to tackle. A huge fishing net caught on an old wreck and then abandoned, still catching and killing endangered turtles, fish and other marine life. An estimated 640,000 tonnes of nets are lost or discarded at sea worldwide every year. Divers with the organisation Healthy Seas removed some, but they can't keep up.
This is a huge trawler net, which got stuck on that shipwreck, and the fishermen go closer and closer to the shipwrecks with the hope of catching bigger and bigger amount of fish, because they know that not only the fish but also other marine animals use the wrecks as a hiding place, as a breeding place. And by wanting to have bigger catch, they take bigger risks.
On World Oceans Day, Healthy Seas is calling on governments and the fishing industry to reduce the number of nets being abandoned. At least this one was removed, no longer a threat to the sharks and other marine life that live in one of the most overfished seas in the world.
Thomas Moore reporting there. That's all from us tonight. The World will be back at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Anna will be here next with the wrap. Good night.